And hello and welcome everybody to Sound Off with Sinkoff. I am Brian Sinkoff. Of course, Sound Off is sponsored by the Sinkoff Realty Group, a full service real estate brokerage right here in the capital region of New York. Well, I am honored today to have a special guest on Sound Off with Sinkoff. We're smack dab in the middle of the Summer Olympic Games in Paris, and who better to talk about these Olympics than my uncle? You remember him as Uncle Fenway back in the day. Mark Favermann here with us on Sound Off. Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here with you.
Of course, many remember Uncle Fenway, Uncle Mark, back in the Sound Off days. Back with us, Mark is runs Favermann Design, and I'll let you tell everyone a little bit about it. Mark, located in Boston, you have a very big sports background. Not only are you a sports fan, but your firm does a lot of work in the sports field.
Well, we started off in the early 90s working on the World University Games in Buffalo and in Southern Ontario. And I did that work because I was really interested in working on the Olympics that were coming up in 1996 in Atlanta. I'll get back to that in a moment.
Yep.
We also have worked on NCAA Final Fours, the 1999 Ryder Cup, bowl games in Florida, the Commonwealth Games in Manchester, England. And for the past 23 seasons, we have been a design consultant to the Boston Red Sox. That's how I became Uncle Fenway.
So, Mark, when you say working on the games, tell everybody a little bit about what you're referring to. You're talking
I'm
about the
trained
look.
as an urban designer. So I look at things visually from the top down, unlike a graphic designer who looks from small things up. So my purview or my perspective is somewhat unique, and that's why I was selected to design the look, as they call it, of various sports projects. Now, in 1993, my then wife was at lunch with her mother, and a former neighbor of ours said that she had just received a letter from the Atlanta Organizing Committee to submit her work. She was a graphic designer, but she said that wasn't her thing, and it was more my thing. And let me, let her send. At the time, she faxed over the letter. I haven't used a fax in 25 years. Anyway, so I got the letter. I read it, and it asked for submission by Monday, and it was a Friday when I got it. In those days, we would FedEx everything, so make sure it could get there overnight. So I wrote out my background, and I sent it to them. And then about 2 or 3 weeks later, I got another letter from them, and it said, "You made the top 25 from the 481 firms that had applied."
Wow.
And so that was quite startling. And then a little bit later, I got another letter that said, "You're in the top 15," because my background fit what they wanted. So they invited me to come to Atlanta for an interview. So I had never done a project of that scale. I didn't really know what to do. So I asked a friend of mine who had worked in a large architectural firm if he had any suggestions of people I could meet who had taken on big projects, and they could advise me. So I went to about 5 architects, and I got nowhere. They were jealous that I had been invited to this. And the 6th one I went to, however, had a really good idea. For the previous 10 years or so, our firm had been designing shopping mall interiors. And so we did a lot of banners. And as you can see at the Olympics, there are banners. So he said to me, "Do you have any?" We had done, 80, shopping centers and shopping malls, rather. They were enclosed. And he said, "Do you have any samples of these banners?" And I said, yeah, we save one from every project. He says, well, take 25 of them with you when you go to Orlando and unroll them. Nobody's going to do that and show
Right.
what you've done. And then he also said your slides are good, tighten them up, and then I left out something. There was a fledgling cable sports company that worked on the World University Games in 1993, and I called them up in Connecticut, and I asked them what it would cost to get the video of because they used my designs as segues between sports.
Right.
So they said something like $600 or $700. I couldn't afford that. So I was complaining to your mother, Brian, about that, and she says, "Oh, there's no problem. I have it all on Betamax." So
Uh,
your mother sent me the video. So when I went to Atlanta, I walked into this room, and the room looked like the Nuremberg trials. Nobody smiled. I didn't know. They didn't introduce themselves. I didn't know who the hell I was talking to. So I
right.
start presenting. So the first thing I show my slides of all the shopping mall work that we had done, and then I unfurled the banners, and I had a video showing our segues from the cable religion cable channel that was, by the way, named ESPN,
Yeah.
and I walked out, and there was this really nice lady who had escorted me in and out of the room. And she turns to me and she says, Mr. Favermann, you're going to be called back. Maybe she made the decision. I don't know. I mean, they said nothing. They didn't applaud, nothing.
Hmm.
So a couple of weeks later, I hear nothing. A month later, I hear nothing. So my ex-wife was certainly a negative person. So she kept, hounding me. Well, you're not going to get it. You haven't heard. And she went away to New York for a few days, and I picked her up at the airport, and she said, "Well, I guess you didn't hear anything." And I said, "No, I did hear something. They invited me back."
Wow.
So I get rather emotional when I talk about it. So we were one of 5 firms from all over the United States who were chosen to design the Atlanta Olympics, and it was the largest contract I had up until that time, and it was one of the best and worst experiences of my professional life.
Why do you
Um,
say that?
well,
Let's look at some
you
of the slide. Let's look at some of the stuff here.
yeah,
You got it on your screen here, right?
yes, I see it.
All
Yeah,
right. So why was it this is the stuff you did,
right,
right?
right.
Were we looking at all of that?
Yep,
So those out there watching again, it's Sound Off with Sinkoff with we're with Mark Favermann here. He is Favermann Design in Boston. Designed the look of the Olympics in 1996. We're going to talk about the Paris Games here in 2024. But why I wanted to bring Mark on was because not only just how the whole process and the in-depth process of the Olympics, it's obviously big preparation from choosing the city to transportation to hotels to accommodations, but also the look. Because every Olympics, I think it's fair to say, Mark, when you think of Olympics, I think you and I talked about this before this podcast. Unlike anything else, when I mention, 1996 Atlanta, I think of the Leaf. LA, 1980 Lake Placid, I think of like that bear, right? That's sort of whatever the heck that I'm always thinking of the look of the games when I hear the Olympics, and I don't think you can say that about any other sporting event. All the logos of every event sort of looks the same, but the Olympics have their own individual look. Fair to say?
yes, and they also include the name of the host city and the date, so that if there's a sports event that they photograph, it is very unique to that event and that
And
time,
and
and
this
and
is and
and
this where I'm circling is really what I remember most about those games. That Atlanta 1996.
so
You
so
talked
what was
about that
hard
flag.
is we had to collaborate with 5 firms, so you can imagine all the egos in the room. And then the Atlanta people felt like they should have it alone, and so they did everything they could to not necessarily help me and my group, but it's that type of thing. But it was exhilarating. It also gave me great confidence to take on any sports event afterwards. And I'm sure our long work with the Boston Red Sox is a function of having worked on the Olympics
Right.
in '96. So
Um, so Mark, let's look at some other things from the Atlanta games here. You talked about sort of when there's the sporting event, and you talked about how people remember the event, and here you go in the screen here with the cycling, and you can see right here, you can sort of see the look in the background. Everywhere you go, it's, let's face it, it's your imprint. Mark, how uh how cool is that, looking back now at all these years later, that people still remember that look and that you were a big part of it?
well, Brian, I've thought of this. It's kind of macabre, but uh, when I won this, I can say Olympic designer on my tombstone. So that's how cool it is. I mean, it's part of my professional life and me as a person. Now here is
Well, we'll go back, Mark. Before we end the Atlanta games, I want to talk a little bit about sort of your inspiration for where did you come up with this look?
if
I
you
mean,
go
it's an
back
iconic look.
if you go back to an
This
earlier
one
slide.
or the first one?
Yeah,
This one?
that one. Yeah, the right side, and you can see the a green
This
pattern of it. I actually
this
hand drew that, and then it was interpreted into color. The idea is
this
how
one
the
this one right here.
yeah, it's called the quilt of leaves.
Wow.
The one at the top in the middle,
Oh,
and
okay, okay, this one.
yeah, and the idea of it is that Atlanta is very lush and very verdant. There's a lot of trees and grass. In fact, it was joked about that Dallas was Atlanta without any trees at one point. But anyway, so we had that in mind. We also were on the edge of Appalachia. And so quilts were a major craft of Appalachian women. And so we sort of connected the two to the Southern Appalachians and to the green and flowers of Atlanta in the South. So that's where it came from.
How many versions of that did you have to do before the Olympic Committee said, "Okay, we like it"?
They liked it right away, the first sketch. And then
Really?
they, yeah. I mean, everybody was sat in a room and we said, sketch out something. And mine won. And everybody sort of took credit for it, but that's okay. I did that, and I have the black and white version on my wall behind me. So,
That's awesome.
yeah.
That's awesome. All right, Mark. How you love? I mean, you're just a sports fan. You love the Olympics, and I know you love watching these games. But how do you sort of correlate a look with the Olympics? Just because you're in it so deep.
Well, I think some of them are quite bad, and I write about them in articles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, Paris is an exquisitely beautiful city. Period.
Let's
Whatever
go
you
to
do to
theirs.
it, it's not going to hurt it. But in this case, they did a rather nice job with the colors and the design. A few other things are not so good, like the pictograms and the actual logo. These are all based on architecture or monuments in and around Paris. And so they have applied these graphics to each of the venues, all the sports venues. So,
And
but that's another reason they do a look is they thematically connect all venues to each other.
right, we
And
go
and on
back.
the metal, you go back to that
Yeah.
slide, the metal. They
Yep.
did something really clever. They took a piece of the Eiffel Tower, and that's in the middle of these metals. And the Eiffel Tower piece is from repairs to the Eiffel Tower. Over the years, they happened to keep the metal that they took down and
Wow.
replaced. Isn't that cool?
That is really cool. That is cool. So here's some shots as more
So
of
this one
this
is in
cityscape.
Marseille, and So it's a seaside town, and this is I guess to get out of the heat, and it's pretty cool. That's a mirrored surface because the design is on the ground, and that's reflected up.
Oh,
So
wow. That is so cool.
yeah,
There's a just a look, kind
and
of a
there it
real.
is on the Seine River,
Yep.
and they put it as much as possible. As you know, at the opening ceremonies, all the athletes came down on boats and barges, so you could see that on behind the athletes. So pretty cool.
That it was cool. And here's just a street here. You know
Yeah.
better than me.
Well, this is I think where the cycling or the marathon were.
You like this look though, this
I think it's
Paris look,
pretty
don't
good.
you?
I mean, I think it's nice.
There's the diving.
Yep,
You
diving.
could see there, right?
Yep, and
The
see the
sort of
name very strong. So if you
see
see have a picture of it, that's in there.
Mark. Now, what I don't understand, you talked about how you always notice, the city and the year, but there's nothing on this backdrop that screams that's diving, right?
Oh no, behind the diver, there would be, and on the outside, the exterior um,
Of the venue.
of the venue, there would be a pictogram
Okay,
blown up
okay,
large.
I see. And then this is track. You
Track.
got it behind you here
Yeah,
with the look. Sort of, this would have been like your leaf
the quilla
sort of
leaves. Yeah,
branding.
yeah,
Okay. And then there's your gymnastics right behind you, sort of that same look.
yeah,
Paris 24. They really put it out there everywhere to see, don't they?
yeah. I think they did a rather nice job with the venues, and
Mm-hmm.
they didn't have to build much because Paris has so many beautiful structures already. So LA is not going to build much either, by the way. That's in 2028. And they didn't build much in 1984 either. That was the sort of a big impact visual application for the first time.
Mark, how and I know we talk about the look and we talk about sort of the venues and the branding of the cities, but how tough is it? One thing that fascinates me is how these cities bid. They
Yeah.
bid on the Olympics. It's such a process. We know it's a little bit corrupt and crooked in the years past. It's certainly been. How
It's not
tough
a
is it to
moneymaker either.
it's no, it's not. They lose money. Well,
So,
especially the cities that have to create things
yeah,
from scratch.
yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
How
Like
tough is it to get a bid for the
Sochi did
Olympics?
spent like 50 billion or something ridiculous, 70 billion.
Right.
Um, it's gotten to the point, Brian, that only one or two cities are even bidding on it per games now. It's
Really.
not, yeah. I mean, it's that expensive and that commitment. Boston had won it somehow. I don't know how, but somehow, and their ideas were so the people in charge were so off the rails that they lost it. The state wouldn't fund it, and the city wouldn't fund it, and they weren't secure enough to know that the corporations would come in and help them. But they wanted to focus it only on the city of Boston, so they wouldn't reach out to say Providence or even Albany or
Right.
other places because the smart Olympics spread it out. It's all over
Hmm.
France. It's not just in Paris
Right.
and in Tahiti, even they're doing
For the
surfing.
surfing.
And
Right.
LA has already said that some stuff is going to happen in Oklahoma City. They're not going to have it all in LA. So,
Right.
but Boston, knew everything. I tried to volunteer, they didn't let me. So it's okay.
When were they bidding? Which
They were going to
Olympics?
win this one, 2024.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
The summer of 24.
yeah.
The cities lose so much money, and a lot of it is just because of the infrastructure they
Well,
have to build.
Atlanta didn't lose any money, and some of them don't. LA won't lose any money. And Paris, I don't think spent a huge amount either. But Paris is the number one tourist attraction in the world. I don't know if you knew that. More people go
Right.
there than any place else. So because it's so beautiful. But anyway, interesting and complicated. The World Cup is the other thing that is somewhat like this in terms of bidding by cities and countries. So that's another aspect of it.
How do you think the future of the Olympics are going to go, Mark? Do you think it's going to be what it's always been? I mean, it still gets crazy good TV ratings. I mean, everybody's talking about it. Everybody seems to be watching it. They're not going away anytime soon, are
No,
they?
no, I don't think so. Part of the issue is the problem is that the next generation doesn't necessarily watch things on television anymore.
Right.
So they're gonna, and they have gotten much more clever about how they're gonna, um, how they have been presenting things, how they have been showing what's going on there on different forms. So you can go to Facebook or TikTok or YouTube, and you can see almost immediately things that have been happen at the various Olympic venues.
Mark, it is very interesting. I find it, and you brought me to my next point, and that is in the Olympics. Even going back to the '90s and the 2000s, these, like Paris are 5, 6 hours ahead of us, right? I think
Right,
it's five. Is it 5 hours?
six in Paris,
Six. So,
five in
the
London.
swimming and the gymnastics happens in the afternoon. They show it on prime time at night. I've been finding that we kind of already know who won. It's almost impossible to ignore it. I think for me, maybe the Olympics have lost a little bit of luster because I feel like at prime time, I already know what's happened. Um, and I think that's hard to hide from. So I don't know how an Olympic sport like this, unless it's held in the United States, which it will be in a few years, how it remains fresh, because it just doesn't feel fresh to me, right?
Well, it's even worse when it was in Tokyo.
Right.
I mean, or or,
18
or
hours ahead,
Beijing,
right?
or
Right. It was
Beijing. So
20, what was it, 18 hours ahead?
something like that. I mean, it was
Yeah.
crazy. So in Sochi, it was 7 or 8 hours ahead in Russia when they did the Winter Olympics
Right,
there.
right.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's a problem. But on the other hand, the more obscure sports that people don't ever see, like uh, Greco-Roman wrestling, for instance, or speed climbing,
Or
or
ping pong.
ping pong, right,
Right.
or badminton, or fencing. I mean, it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
cool to see that stuff. So there is going to be something they can market. Track and field and swimming are and basketball and
And
volleyball and
gymnastics.
gymnastics. Those are sort of the meat and potatoes of the
Well, I
Olympics.
personally, the Summer Olympics are my favorite. I did a podcast about a week ago, and I said it seems as if the Winter Olympics those sports were created on a dare. You know what I mean?
Well,
I dare
your
you to
mother
ski
actually said
down.
something really funny years ago. She said the Winter Olympics are sports that most people would never dare to do.
Right.
I mean, they would be frightened to even think
It's a
about them.
dare. I
Yeah,
mean, a bobsled, going on a luge, mogul skiing. Like, I dare you to do this. All right, let's create an Olympic sport.
or go
I just,
a slalom, going as fast as you can
yeah,
down a mountain.
through
Yeah,
right through the gates. I just think the Summer Games sounds corny. Maybe they're a little pure, and I think one of the reasons why most people of any athletic level can relate to the Summer Games, because let's face it, we've all been in a pool. We've all, know, most of us know how to swim. We've at least
right,
swam. We've
right.
run. Right. I mean, I may not have thrown a javelin, but it's probably a lot easier to identify with that than mogul skiing. I mean, I wrestled. You wrestled. I've never fenced, but most of the other sports, they're kind of simple and pure, right? I mean, in
Right.
terms of
Yeah,
the Summer
they're
Games.
clean and to a certain extent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
the track and field, to me, in swimming, what you see is what you get. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing other than what they do, and I like those a lot to watch.
All right, Mark, before we let you go, you mentioned you did a lot of work with the Red Sox. We want to show everybody your work because, whether you're a baseball fan, and we got a lot of Red Sox fans here in the capital region, really all over, a lot of Yankee fans. And let's just face it, Fenway's an iconic ballpark. But let's talk a little bit about what it is you do with the Red Sox. So
So
go ahead and
I got a phone call from a guy named Sam, who in the end of 2021, and he said, "You're nearby. Are you capable of doing this and this and this?" And I said, "Yeah, we can do anything. We did the Olympics in
wait.
1996.
What year was this?
This is 2001.
Oh, okay.
Okay, he was part of
2001,
the new group that just bought Fenway and the Red
right?
Sox. Today he's Sam Kennedy, and he's the CEO of the Red Sox. At the time, he was a younger guy. Anyway, so we over time started showing them how they could use the pads behind the batter that's always on television and the pads between the two dugouts. Um, and part of what we did was use some of the things we learned at the Olympics, that when we were asked to sort of do corporate sponsorship things in a group, we would make sure that they all were the same color. And the color we would use is white on a darker background. So we started to introduce them to the idea that we'll take Dick's Sporting Goods, or we'll take National Car Rental, and we'll not use their logo colors, but we'll put them white on Fenway green. Fenway green is what Fenway Park is painted in.
This is what we're talking about
Here's
right
a
here.
mock-up to show our clients, the Red Sox, what it could look like on one of the temporary pads. Then eventually it was adopted, and we did it in the dugouts, and we did it in special areas where there's special seating. And this is what we've done for 23 seasons. And I have a crew that works part-time for me during the summer, and they take care of all the changes and all the upgrades. About halfway through the summer, we have to repaint a lot of stuff because it's abused by balls or kicks or whatever. So
And so
the major project that I was called about initially was to celebrate in some way or memorialize the 9/11 tragedy. And so what we came up with was, and you can show a picture of it,
yep.
the United States flag on the green monster, but it couldn't be a normal flag, and it couldn't be in the normal shape of a flag. We had to use the dimensions that it had. So it's 200 feet long and 37 feet tall. And it's unfurled at opening day, all the holidays, Memorial Day, Labor Day, whatever, July 4th, if they're in town. And then during World Series or playoffs, it's also unfurled. So that's in baseball history books, and it's in the history of the game. We also have stuff like that we had done. Oh, that's a nice picture of it. We also did the tribute to Ted Williams, and we used the green monster, and people would walk by it and, I don't know, pray for Ted's body and cryovac or whatever it is in. He froze his body.
Right. Let's show a little bit more here, Mark, because I just find it truly fascinating, some of the stuff you've done just at Fenway and things of that nature. So let's pull this up here for a sec. And Mark, we get back to this now. How often are you, like you said, you guys are over there? Are you over there? Are you over there like once a homestand? Are you over there, every other homestand? Like, what is the
No, it's several times during the homestand.
and sponsorships change nightly?
They could. Sometimes they're up 2 days, 1 day.
There we go. There's dugout, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is all yours. The Merrill at the top.
Oh yeah, and we changed that to Bank of America twice a summer, and Merrill was a subsidiary of theirs.
And
So
what about the MLB? Do you do that too? And the Ford?
yes,
And then the Xfinity on the
yep,
padding.
and the Xfinity on the railings, and yeah, a
So
lot of the details that we do.
so Mark, how are you doing this? You have a stencil that someone physically paints this?
It's physically painted. I
Wow.
have people who can do it. Yeah,
That's got to be kind of labor intensive, huh?
yeah. I mean, it ain't cheap to do it. I mean, it's not a great fundraiser for me, but I got to get it done for them. And oh, by the way, like the Olympics, it's not like you can do it tomorrow if you miss today. It ain't happening. You got to get it done. So if there's a mistake, we have to go out there an hour or half an hour before a game and correct it.
Here's Franklin, a mock up for Franklin,
Yeah,
right? The batting
yeah,
gloves. And Mark, this redsox.com is you as well,
yes,
correct?
yes,
And the 99, these things are just rotating billboards. So
yes,
that's
yes.
not necessarily you
We
guys.
have permanent ones that we do at the beginning of the year that are bigger, and then the smaller ones are the changing ones. So,
Mark, that's got to be fun for you, though. No? I mean, how cool is
I
that?
work on it almost daily. I can't tell you how much time I put into it, but it's a daily activity, and I send to the bosses um, uh, pictures of everything as they're done. So, yesterday I sent images of. I hope I haven't lost you. Are you there?
No, I'm here.
Okay. Um, I sent pictures of stuff that we had repainted to them and to the advertising agency for Bank of America, so they could all see it together.
And I'm sure they loved it.
Oh yeah,
What's not to
I'm
love?
thanked, all the
Yeah.
time about it. So
Well, awesome, Mark. This is a first on my podcast, having a member of my family, but well deserved. Everybody knows Uncle Fenway from back in the Sound Off with Sinkoff radio days. And now he joins us back in the Sound Off with here in the Sound Off with Sinkoff podcast moment. So, Mark, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. Always a pleasure. Love talking Olympics and the Red Sox with you.
always enjoy speaking about sports with Mr. Sinkoff.
All right,
Thank you.
that's gonna do it for this edition of Sound Off with Sinkoff. Make sure you check me out on YouTube, Spotify, all your places you can get podcasts. Give me a like, give me a subscribe, and until next time, everybody, have a great day.